On today's Locked On Giants podcast, just how realistic is a Matthew Stafford trade to the Giants shaping up? Locked On Rams co-host Travis Rodgers fills us in on all the latest regarding that and then some. That's coming your way next here on the Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode of the Locked On Giants podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. I'm your host, Patricia Train, a credential member of the New York Giants media for Locked On, as well as for New York Giants on SI, which is where you can find all my written work. And as always, welcome on into our Blue Crew community members, our newcomers, our everydayers, and everybody in between. Thank you for spending part of your day with us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. And on today's show, I'm pleased to welcome in my Locked On colleague, Travis Rodgers. He is co-host of Locked On Rams. And gosh, Travis, what can we possibly have to talk about the Giants and the Rams? You know, I'm just kidding. We're going to talk about Matthew Stafford. Travis is going to give us a little bit more insight, maybe some things we don't know from the Rams' perspective. So that's going to be what we discuss today. Travis, welcome on in, my friend.
Thank you, Patricia. It's great to be here.
All right, Travis, let's get down to the nitty-gritty here. What exactly is going on with Matthew Stafford and the Rams? Do they want him back? Do they think they can get him back? Where do things stand right there?
Yeah, I think I think those are the two biggest questions, the most important questions, and I think the answer to one of them is, do they want them back? Is absolutely they do. They want him back. He is their best possible option to have a successful season next year. There really isn't somebody that I think is even close to going to put the Rams where they have been and where they can be that Matthew Stafford would be able to do. So they clearly want him back. Everything that you've heard from Les Snead and the Rams brass leads to it. And Sean McVay in particular has made it very clear they want him back, but there's always the caveat on the back end of it, which is they want him back, but they do not want to be painted into a corner. They will not do it under any cost. They are willing to work. They're willing to try to meet somewhere in the middle, towards the middle, maybe a little bit towards Matthew Stafford's side as opposed to the true middle. But they want him back. But they've also made it very clear that it's not under any circumstances we're going to do this. It needs to be something that at least is palatable for the Rams.
So they want him back on their terms. That being said, Matthew Stafford took the Rams to within one game of the NFC Championship game. They still think apparently he has juice left in his tank. Mm-hmm. So what is the harm here in giving him an increase? Why are they balking? Because it seems like not only are they balking with him, but it looks like they're trying to get rid of some other guys and dismantle the team. So they're to me, it sounds like they're sending mixed messages.
Yeah, I can understand why it looks like that. I don't really think that they are. I think the reason that they're balking a little is he's going to be 37 years old next year. And once you get to a certain point, I think there is a little bit of that. Yeah, we like it, but how much do we like it and how long do we want to like it for? And I think that's what they're doing. I think if this were a 1-year thing, it's done like that. I think if we're talking about beyond a 1-year thing, it gets more complicated than that. And I also think, and I want to be careful how I put this because I'm speculating here. This is just me having covered this team for 9 years. This is me having seen every game of the Sean McVay era and listening to what he says and listening to how the Rams operate and whatnot. Sean McVay's a good coach. And I think there's one of these, hey, look, we're better with you, but we're not dead without you. That we can move forward. We did move forward. We had a pretty good quarterback in Jared Goff, and we decided that we're going to do something different, and it worked. And if we need to do something different, we will. They're going to have to pay some very good players very soon. Puka Nacua is coming up before too long. We just saw what Jared Verse did, and maybe it's not a year or two away, but they're going to have to pay him at one point or another. They don't have a ton of financial flexibility. They've got a little bit. But I think most of the leverage in this, Patricia, is on Matthew Stafford's side, but not all of it. And I think that's part of what this is that they're willing to work. And I don't know if it's, we'll do it on our terms, but it can't be exclusively on his terms.
You mentioned, they want him back.
Mm-hmm.
In your opinion, Travis, how much gas does Stafford have left in the tank? Is he still playing at a high enough level to where he's right in asking for the money, or is he just dreaming?
I think it's more towards the first thing you said. I think he's worth it. I think he's terrific. And I understand where I'm coming from. I am an unabashed Matthew Stafford fan. He showed up and they won a Super Bowl like that. And other than the season after that, where basically everybody on their team who was anybody got hurt and the whole thing just went up in flames basically from opening night, he's given them a chance every time they go out there. The reason they got hot towards the end of last year and the reason that they dismantled Minnesota, the reason that they were the one team in the NFC that looked like, given a chance or two, they might have been able to beat Philadelphia, was because of Matthew Stafford. He's that guy. Now, 37, it could turn around and, poof, it could be gone tomorrow. I don't think it is. I think he's got some football left in him. But I really do think that the Rams are getting ready for what's next. They'd rather kick the can down the road another year, maybe two, but they're going to have to go somewhere different eventually. And they're at least willing to open the door to that possibility of eventually being next season.
What do you think the Rams will want for Matthew Stafford in a trade?
Great question. And I don't know really, other than just kind of taking my own best guess, because they have not tipped their hand at all. Usually when this kind of stuff floats around, it gets out there. Like when they were shopping Cooper Kupp reportedly earlier at the trade deadline, they were looking for a second round pick or better. And, come on, man, that's not going to happen. So you knew that the price was not going to be met, and you knew that something probably wasn't going to happen. I think it depends on who you're dealing with. The Giants, of course, have the third pick. The Raiders have the sixth pick. These are the two names that you see come up the most often, and I would imagine that the negotiation starts with one of those two picks. And who knows where it goes from there. But the Rams have been very, very good at keeping whatever request they may. And look, I want to be clear about this. I don't know if they're out there actively shopping him. I think they're waiting for their phone to ring as opposed for they're out there and throwing lines in the water. But I can't imagine that they would do it without a pretty significant haul coming back the other way.
Hey, Giant fans, when the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game so that even if you miss the opening tip-off or you want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. The app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. And right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com today to join. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. I know over the last few years, Matthew's had a few injuries here and there. I don't think he's missed a whole lot of time. He's just been banged up. That being said, do you think that's a concern for a team moving forward?
I think it's a concern for anybody that plays like he does at the age that he is. This is not a quarterback that is going to make people miss with his feet, right? He's a traditional pocket quarterback. You're going to find him where you expect him to be. So that's always a concern. He's going to be 37. Like you mentioned, he's been pretty good. He hasn't missed a bunch of time, but he's also taken some shots and had some little things here or there that have at least, maybe slowed him down a little bit or had some performances that weren't great. What he's really good at is, I think, what Tom Brady was really good at as he got older, and Peyton Manning and guys like that. You don't get to hit him very often. He's really good at understanding when it's not going to happen. He gets rid of the ball. He's not I'm going to wait a half a second longer and hope that something. Now, if it's the difference between waiting a half a second longer to make a big play, he'll take the shot. But he's just not going to do it to be a tough guy. That's just not what he's doing. He's too smart of a player like that. But I think once you get to where he is, Patricia, 37 years old, and he's got a neck thing that kept him out a couple of years ago, and there's always been little bumps and bruises along the way. But at this point, I think that's always a concern, but it's not a huge concern. As a Rams person, as somebody that would like to see them continue to do well, I desperately want him back. I'm not worried about him breaking next year. It's not a concern of mine. So if I were on the other end trying to acquire him, I don't think it would bother me either.
All right, now Travis, I don't know if you how close you are to Stafford, but your gut feeling, some people say, well, why would he want to come to the Giants? Maybe the Raiders would be a better fit for him. If you had to get inside his head and figure out where the best fit for him was, which team would you say is the best fit?
The Rams.
The Rams, obviously.
Yeah. And this is why I'll answer it this way, Patricia. I think if I'm looking at these three teams, the Rams make the most sense for the Rams. It makes the most sense for Matthew Stafford. That it gives that if the Rams can move a little bit on the money and give him something that he feels is representative of his status in the NFL and get him to the place where he's at least comfortable enough, the Rams can provide him the environment to go compete at a high level in the NFL. That they're the defending NFC West champions. They've made the playoffs each year that he's been here, other than one. It's Sean McVay. It's a city that he's familiar with. It's a city that he's popular with. And the Rams at least have a realistic chance as we sit here at the end of February to say they've got a very good chance of being a playoff team. So I think that's that. The Rams obviously would like him back because they don't have a better option. I think the next best option are the Raiders because first of all, the Raiders are, I think for the first time, kind of sort of heading in the right direction. They hired Pete Carroll, which I think would be appealing to somebody like Matthew Stafford, a veteran NFL coach. You don't have to break in a new guy. You don't have to worry about a guy asking you to do silly stuff that sometimes rookie coaches do. And they got Chip Kelly as an offensive coordinator. So I think that would be intriguing as a quarterback there. Being a Raider is, even though the Raiders have been kind of lousy for the last 20 years or so, the Raiders are the Raiders. The Raiders kind of have some cachet that I think is important to players. The Raiders have a ton of money to spend. The Raiders have cap space. The Raiders have a pick. The Raiders are in a it's an inside environment. It's a warm environment. It's good if you're an older player like Stafford. You don't have to play in the cold. You don't have to do things like this. And then I think the Giants are somewhere on the list after those two. The Raiders are the ones that make me kind of, I don't know. I don't love this. I don't know what's in it for Matthew Stafford to go to the Giants other than money. The money. Matthew Stafford, we were doing a little thing on my radio show today. In the history of the NFL, only one person has ever made more money than Matthew Stafford, and that's Aaron Rodgers. He's made $360 million. So if the difference is go to a team like the Giants, and I'm just making up numbers here, for let's say $55 million, or stay in Los Angeles for, let's say, $48 million, to me, that's not a hard choice. That, if he's a new guy, first contract, sure, you go take the money in these places, but you would know better than I would. It doesn't feel like the Giants are close to being a contender. It feels like they're a work in progress, that they're not just a quarterback away from doing, big time things. And he's only got a few more bites at this. The Giants thing has never really made a ton of sense to me.
Let's play a hypothetical situation. If he were to be traded to the Giants, I mean, how good of a fit, based on what the Giants' offensive system that they run, how good of a fit would Stafford be?
I think he fits anywhere. I think he's one of those guys that first of all, you're bringing him in because of what he brings to the table, which is a ton of experience, elite processing. Like he figures it out really, really quick. And he still has, in my estimation, one of the best arms in the league. I think that works anywhere, unless you're going to do, some Lamar Jackson type of offense, which they never would do. But yeah, I think you could drop him into any place that has enough offensive line protection capabilities to give him the time that he needs. He doesn't need a ton, but he needs enough that he would thrive anywhere. I think the money has to be met to a level that is respectful in his opinion, and there has to be at least an outline to win. And that's why the Raiders, I think, are slightly more interesting to me than the Giants are.
If he were to come to the Giants, obviously the Giants are going to want to be looking for their long-term franchise quarterback. Whether they take one this year or next year or whatever, still to be determined. So that being said, do you think that would be a factor to where, if Stafford were to come here, for example, and always to have that looking over his shoulder, so to speak, I think that would be a factor in his decision? And I know it's not his decision. I know he doesn't have a no trade clause, but I think that would factor into the whole, dynamic.
I'll be honest, Patricia, I really haven't thought about that. I'm kind of thinking it through as you ask the question. Not where he is in his career. If he were maybe even 2 years younger, I think yes. I think that would be something that maybe would give a player like him some pause. It's like, am I your guy or not? Why are you bringing me in here and then bringing in, a Kirk Cousins, Michael Penix situation? I don't think that's where he is. I think he's quite aware. There have been rumblings, discussions, thoughts that he may be towards the end of the line for a couple of years now. And not because of his play diminishing, but rather just how much longer do you want to do this? So I think he's fully aware of the fact that, he's a lot closer to the end than he is the beginning. And if they try to do two things simultaneously, bring him in a win now situation, a culture building situation, and then at the same time simultaneously try to develop a younger player, I don't think that would be a deciding factor for him.
How would he take to, the role of mentor in addition to having to learn, a new city, a new offense, a new everything?
I have not heard one thing since he's come to Los Angeles that would lead me to believe he's anything other than ready to do all of those things, that he has been the quintessential teammate in every regard. Now, here's the wild card. He's never been anything other than the guy. He's never been anything other, he never mind trying to mentor somebody. He was the guy they went out and got to put him over the top. Like, he was the guy that, Jared Goff's not quite what we need. We need to go here. And he was this, and he did it. And he kind of just like, okay, what else? What's the next act? So he hasn't had somebody that has been openly being groomed for his job. So there's always that to it. But I haven't even heard a whiff, not a whisper of him being anything other than a terrific teammate.
Now, just kind of getting off topic, there's a smidge here. You also have Jimmy Garoppolo as the backup there. And I know, he was mentioned by a couple of people, myself included, before this whole thing with Stafford developed, as maybe being a possibility for the Giants. If we could talk a little bit about him, where is Jimmy right now? I know he had some injury issues. He's bounced around. Do you think he would make more sense for the Giants, assuming that Matthew came back to the Rams?
So I'll give you two answers here. Number one, yes, I do, because I think he's the sort of player that fits what, at least as far as I can tell, where the Giants kind of are in their arc to getting back to, competition, getting back to playoff position and competing for Super Bowls. That is he the answer long term? Clearly, no, he's not at that point in his career. But is he better than what you've had there recently? Yeah, I think he is, and I think that he's a pro. I know that the Rams clearly coming into this season felt that Matthew Stafford may miss some time because of injuries or whatnot. The Rams had always kind of skimped at the backup quarterback position, and this was the one year they didn't. They went out and got Jimmy Garoppolo. He only played in one game all season long. He played the last game of the season where the playoffs had already been decided, and it wasn't an important game as far as the result. He was pretty good. He believe it or not, it's kind of a weird trivia thing that the single highest passing yardage total of the season was Jimmy Garoppolo in Week 18 against the Seahawks. I know I'm in the minority when I say this. I'm a Jimmy Garoppolo fan. He's pretty good. He's not great, but you could do worse than him. And one of the things that has been speculated here is that if they do make a move with Matthew Stafford and he does end up on another team, that okay, who's the replacement? And the consensus kind of seems to be that it might be Jimmy Garoppolo, that he could be your guy for a year. He's been in the building. He knows the offense. He like we were talking about a second ago, he processes pretty quickly. Now, he doesn't have the arm talent that a player like Matthew Stafford does, but this was a guy that took a team to a Super Bowl. He's not a bad football player by any stretch of the imagination. So Jimmy Garoppolo as the quarterback of the New York Giants, it makes sense to me. I can't imagine it would thrill Giant fans because it's not terribly exciting, but I liked having him on the Rams all season long. I can tell you that.
Now, I mean, is it fair to say that Jimmy Garoppolo is a guy that you can win with instead of, in spite of?
I haven't seen him enough here to give you a really great answer about that. I will, when guys like Bryce Perkins and John Wolford came into games, because Matthew Stafford had gone down, it was always when the idea of Matthew Stafford being knocked out of the game and Jimmy Garoppolo coming in, it was okay, how long is Stafford going to be gone? Not that we can't win some games, but if you got to play a month with Jimmy G as your backup, great. I think you can work around it. A season maybe is a little bit different, but I think he's more of a guy that's there not to mess it up than he is a guy that's there to go and win you a game.
Okay, so just getting back to Stafford then, I mean, I've heard that the Rams, if they were to move him, they got to have the first round pick. And I can tell you right now, the Giants will not give up that first round pick. Do you think that would be the potential deal breaker? And not just for the Giants, but for the Raiders or any team, that if they didn't get that first round pick, they say, you know what, we're keeping him. We'll work this out. I mean, do you think that will be the tipping point?
Well, I guess the question would be is how far apart are the two parties on them, just the straight salary, right? Like if they're $15-20 million apart or something crazy like that, and the Rams just simply won't budge, Matthew Stafford may just not play football. I think that's a possibility as well. I don't know if the Rams don't get what they want in compensation coming back the other way, if they necessarily nuke it over a certain pick here or there. But I don't think the Rams are going to get fleeced in this deal. I think they're going to get what they want or something close to it, or they'll pay him, or they'll just say no and see what happens next.
So basically call the bluff, so to speak.
Yeah.
So if you're putting together a new contract for Matthew, and I'm assuming the Rams would probably rip it up, what he's got left. I know if he came to the Giants, they would rip it up. But what are some of the elements do you think he would not accept? And by that, I mean voidable years, roster bonuses, per game roster bonuses. What are some contract elements that maybe are just deal breakers for him?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure. I think that what the structure of this is fairly simple in the sense that I don't see this going beyond a 2-year deal. I don't see this being anything that is he has to hit certain thresholds to get certain things. I think that's what he's looking for. Is he wants his money no matter what, whether he gets hurt or like that. That's the point of all of this. That and respect. I don't think that the Rams have a ton of interest in having him be their quarterback beyond a season or two. I don't think that anything in a third year, unless all of a sudden now we're talking about voidable years and whatnot, then maybe there's something there. But that the Rams have already decided that they're at least willing to have this staring contest now means that they're prepared to move on if they have to. And to reiterate, they don't want to. They've made it very clear that they don't want to. Everybody that I've talked to that knows things has made it clear that they don't want to, but they never also add the no matter what. It's we don't want to walk away from this, but if we can't get closer to something that makes sense for us, then we may have to.
The Rams have cap space, though, don't they?
Yeah, they're not totally in a corner. They do. I think it's all the things that we've talked about. I think it's his age. I think it's the fact that they've got some other people that are coming. I think they've got, we're going to have to restart this sooner than later anyway. So if we're not quite where we need to be, and I think they're close to quite where they need to be, maybe we just start it anyway. Like if you need to go all 10 steps to win the Super Bowl and you need to be at 8 to be in the mix, they're at 6.5 or 7. They're just quite, and have been really good with the draft. They've been really good at doing some of those other things. And if without Matthew Stafford, you go back to 4 or 5, but they're going to have to go back to 4 or 5 no matter what. It's just a question of whether or not you're going to do it now or a year or two from now.
All right. Now, Travis, give me your best prediction based on what you know to be true as of this recording. How does this whole thing play out?
I think he stays here. I think this is a one of those situations where this is best for everybody if they work it out here. It's best for the Rams, clearly, and I really do think that it's the best for Matthew Stafford, assuming they make the money palatable. They make the money respectable. It has to be something that we get it, that Tua and Trevor Lawrence and these guys are making these bananas numbers and you're well below that. We know you're better than they are. We can't get you all the way there, but we're going to get you as close as we can and still do these sorts of things. I think Matthew Stafford wants to win, and the teams that we're talking about for the most part are not nearly as close to winning as the Rams are at the moment. So I think that everybody kind of has that moment of surprise. Like, are we really going to walk away from this? And B, am I really going to go play on a bad team for a little bit more money? And both of those things are probably no. And that's why I think they get back together.
Interesting stuff. I mean, I know the Rams have I think they have a hard deadline. Doesn't Stafford have a
yeah, it's a couple of weeks. It's like in the second week of March or something like that. So, they got this done with him last year where they restructured some stuff literally hours before camp was supposed to open. So I think both sides are clearly comfortable playing a little poker with this. But I mean, part of this is me just being optimistic because I am a Rams fan. And part of this means it makes the most sense that he comes back.
All right. Well, I know the Giants, they are very much interested if he does become available. And we talk about it because obviously the permission the Rams gave to his agent was to assess your market value, which I'm sure, if somebody comes along and says, hey, yeah, we'll pay you $50 million or $60 million or whatever, then it becomes a no-brainer. But, there's just so many moving parts to this that can make this whole thing fall apart.
There are. And, I'll go back a year ago when it wasn't quite like this, but there was some, hey, Matthew Stafford's deal is a little weird coming into this. So, are they going to figure this out? And I said it on Locked on Rams. I said it to my co-host, Doug McCain, a million times. I said it to my everydayers. Have heard this a million times along the way. I said last year, under no circumstances will the Rams play this upcoming season without Matthew Stafford. They will get it done. There is no way they don't get it done. And I was right. I'm not saying that this year. I think there are circumstances, like you just pointed out, Patricia, that would make it difficult to get it done, or would look, ego gets involved, pride gets involved. Things that sometimes are illogical get involved. I'm hoping that's not the case here, but I am not giving this there's no way they don't play with him next year. There is a way they don't play with him next year. I think he's back, but I wouldn't bet my car on it.
So you would, if you had to slap a percentage on it, would you say it's better than 50% or?
Yeah, I think it's better. I'd 60, low 60%. I think that that he's back, maybe even 65. But I put it this way: you're not going to knock me over with a feather if I woke up tomorrow morning and the Rams and the Las Vegas Raiders have come to an agreement to trade this pick for this player. The Giants thing would surprise me a little bit more, but the Raiders, they're Tom Brady and Pete Carroll and Raiders, all of that is, and tons of money to spend and looking to make a splash. All that stuff is like, yeah. The Raiders give me pause.
And plus, he doesn't have to move that far. It's not like he's got to move.
What are you seeing that? We were talking about, like, you could kind of quasi commute from LA to Las Vegas without it being a huge problem.
Yeah, that could be a deciding factor. I mean, I know he's got children too, so I'm sure he doesn't want to uproot them and move them across the country. So that'll definitely be a consideration. Travis, appreciate all the feedback. It's always good to see you. He is Travis Rodgers, co-host of Locked on Rams. Be sure to check out the Rams podcast. Be sure to check out all our NFL podcasts, as well as our college podcasts. We're going to find out more about these draft prospects in the coming weeks. For Travis Rodgers, I'm Patricia Traina. Giant fans, have a great weekend, and we'll see you on Monday with all new episodes of Locked on Giants.